Hey guys, it is Ryan. I'm not sure if you know this about me, but I'm a bit of a fun fanatic when I can. I like to work, but I like fun too. And now I can tell you about my favorite place to have fun. Chumba Casino. They have hundreds of social casino style games to choose from with new games released each week. You can play for free and each day brings a new chance to collect daily bonuses. So join me in the fun. Sign up now at ChumbaCasino.com.
Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus. Terms and conditions apply.
Hello, this is the Harvard Light. I'm Mary. I give a conservative perspective about the world around me. So feedback is greatly important. Feel free to reach out to me either through email, Substack, through X, and of course fill up those comments on YouTube. Be greatly appreciated. And on YouTube, please like, share, and subscribe. Be greatly appreciated. So some of the audio platforms that I'm on Spreaker, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, Pandora, and these are just to name a few. Okay, so this podcast is the launch to be the preamp for me talking about MTV's style of house of fashion. So I think fashion is very important. It's one of those things that gets overlooked about how prolific and how it says a lot about someone's thought process about themselves, and along with what society thinks too about the particular fashions. And I think that MTV House of Style did a really good blend of everything. So to launch all this, I'm going to start talking about things in this episode, the lineage and the history of our handbags. Well, purses, and then that's going to link into me talking about handbags on Wednesday, to compare and contrast about it. And, of course, I'm going to get my thoughts. All right, here we go. Okay, so here is the AI-generated response of the origin of purses. So, ancient origins. In Egypt, circa 2686 to 2160 BC, double handle bags made of lining and papyrus were used by Egyptians to carry personal items. So, in ancient Greece, circa 18th century BC, they had coin purses. It was a pouch hung from the belt designed to hide coins and folds of clothing. So in ancient Rome, circa 1st century BC, women used small pouches called, forgive me for pronunciation, broches, to carry coins, keys, and other personal items. So during the Middle Ages, particularly in Europe, circa 5th to the 15th centuries, men and women used small leather pouches, often decorated with metalwork or embroidery, to carry coins, keys, and other valuables. So in Scotland, a leather pouch was worn around the waist, and it was used by Highlanders to carry food, coins, and other essentials. So in the Renaissance and throughout the Industrial Revolution, this would be the periods of the 16th and the 17th centuries. Women's purses called the reticles or indispensables were small drawstring bags worn under skirts or attached to belts. So in the 18th century, the discovery of Pompeii led to a fascination with silk, slender designs, and women began wearing, these types of purses with wrist straps. So in the 19th century, with the introduction of public train travel, Women's purses evolved to be more practical and spacious, often featuring multiple compartments. All right, so we're getting to modern era and then wrapping up with contemporary. So in the early 20th century, the development of synthetic materials and mass production led to the widespread availability of purses in various styles and sizes. Throughout the mid-20th century, the rise of fashion and luxury brands such as Chanel, Louis Vuitton introduced high-end purses as a status symbol. By the late 20th century, the resurgence of interest in vintage and retro styles led to popularity of vintage-inspired purses and the revival of traditional craftsmanship. So, contemporary era, the era we're living in today. So, by the 21st century, when we get into the aspect of digital technology and minimalist lifestyles have influenced purse design, with many modern purses prioritizing functionality and simplicity. So it wraps up by saying throughout history, purses have adapted to changing societal needs, technology advancements, and cultural trends, ultimately becoming an essential factor for both practical and self-expression. All right, so I'm going to give my thoughts and then lead into particular articles about purses. Okay, so the thoughts that I have about purses, in particular how that, our purses give itself as a statement in how it's evolved in society. So it's quite interesting how a lot of things come out from practicality and then they evolve to what they are. So for instance, how this ran into... So I talked about this last year about the aspects of high-heeled shoes. So high-heeled shoes, in the beginning it was for men. And so, as far as, riding on, as a practicality for riding on horses and things like that. And so it's weird as a side point of people saying, trying to put androgyny or something, whatever, into it about the lineage of, high heels with completely ignoring the real reasons why things were invented. And so that takes away from the actual history of something. When you want to hear something for what your agenda that you want to push. And so these things come globbed up and they lose its meaning throughout time. And so that's why it's important to really understand things for what they are. And then, that and then go from there. And so, with the aspect of purses here, it links to the whole aspect of how being creative with practicality. And so, as I mentioned about throughout the years, starting through Egypt, through Europe, and so forth, people were trying to figure out ways to make their lives more easier, more efficient. And so it's it links back to the ingenuity and how evolved people actually are when you go back to what is thought of as unevolved thinking when it's being proven time and time again how the people of certain eras where you think that they didn't have enlightened thoughts, they did, when there's so many things, tools and so many inventions that come out of these eras that prove otherwise. It goes to the point of how the aspect of fashion practicality is really prevalent to what a society thinks about, clothing or your accessories. And so And I think the purse is a really good example to launch all of this out of my thought process about fashion. Me personally, I love fashion. I think fashion is very viable, not viable. Well, here's the thing. So I see that is very viable and vital into the aspects of esteem. So, there's different degrees about esteem of how you present yourself. But me personally, I like high fashion. I like everyday fashion. And so for me personally, be a mix of something for the instance. Now I said these things, talking about, American fashion, linking it to a really good example, as far as J. Crew, Tommy Hilfiger, Ralph Lauren, brand styles like that. I like styles like that. That's very, I coined it as preppy chic. Now that's not, although in certain companies that has different connotations, but to me that means something that's Americana, but it has a little upscale chic to it. And all the way to me I like couture and stuff like that. But couture is not what it used to be. But the origin of couture, you get Christian Dior, stuff like that. I like really elaborate high fashion too. So, it's a mix of all those things, with the everyday wear. And so what my point is, where I'm getting towards here, is that the way you dress and the way you think, it says it's a symbol of how you feel about yourself and what you think, in your sort of processes about the world around you and your esteem. And so, I have a lot of admiration for the aspect of casual wear. And so there's a lot of people who say, and they so rightly said that, you're making a statement too about not caring how you look too. But in casual wear, there's a lot of style and sophistication too that can be in that with casual wear. And there's also a lot of things too to say about yourself when you are who you are, and, depending on the setting, when you're letting, for instance, in introductions to people and so forth, when you're letting them know who you actually are, that is very gracious because you are willing to be upfront and you're very authentic and you're wanting to know that this is who you actually are instead of putting on airs. And that can be another thing about fashion too, can be caught in the crossfire too, where people get into the sorts of using fashion as a status symbol or using fashion to boldly express something or say something or so forth about themselves when they're not actually that. What I'm getting toward, the point that I'm getting towards, being pretentious about fashion. And so that says a lot, too, about a society or a culture, too, when they use fashion as a status symbol, when they're not really, they just want to put on airs versus just saying, oh, look, I appreciate this sort of style, or I like to look nice, or so forth with, versus the aspect of, all flash, no substance. Oh, out and wildly and loudly screaming, oh, I have all this, I'm so this, I'm so that, and just being really gaudy about it. So that also takes away from the aspect of sophistication that is linked to and that is, associated and with fashion that people kind of not, look at, when we get into the modern sense. And so there's also, I'm going to wrap up this too. And there's also another sense that I had said on Substack some weeks back about that there, when you get into the aspects of decades and this sort of fashions.
It is Ryan Seacrest here. Everybody needs some variety in life. That's what I love about Chumba Casino. They know how to keep things fresh and exciting. All their games are free to play, like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire. You can claim free daily login bonuses, too. And they release new games every week. So spice things up with ChumbaCasino.com now for your chance to redeem some serious prizes. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.
Came out of the decade. And what that I had mentioned, last Friday on my topic about style in France. And so, when you get through the lineage of periodic clothing, that also says a lot about what those types of cultures center themselves around. And so when we get into these aspects, it's quite interesting with these aspects of this modern era now, but then using technology with the aspect of minimalism with purses, that says a whole lot of aspects about, practicality versus being efficient with how you think about the functionality of a purse. And so that takes a whole new persona when we get into the aspects of the functionality of the use of a purse now, the thought process of a purse now. Is it, but people who like purses like myself versus people who don't see the need for purses, or that it's just this big clunky thing that gets in the way, and so forth. And so that's another thing, another point to bring up. And so, I'm going to talk about this, and then I'll probably, get more in depth about it on Wednesday, as an introduction, and then just talk about handbags. So I found this, enough, interesting enough that it comes from a scholarly source with this person. From what I'm reading, I'm going to go back and reading. From what I understand, it's this rant about this whole concept about purses being essentially this thing that's being the abstraction of what a female is, or it ain't being confined to a symbol of a purse, that it takes away from the whole spectrum, as they want to say, about the female experience. And so when you get into these terms like spectrum and the female experience and feminism, stuff like that, see, these things strip away from the essentiality of of just the simplicity of the appreciation of being female, with it is being dainty and being, demure, and that there's a lot of strength into that. And instead of being saying that things are associated with that you're associating yourself with being demure and being dainty, being submissive, that's something sort of like a life prison sentence, when it's not. But see, here's the point within all this: these things, it takes away from the aspect of people understanding the true essence, or the true appreciation of the differences between men and women. And then when those lines get blurred and these understandings get misunderstood, we tend to get into a society that is going to be lost. And, that's something that you don't want. And so with this said, I'm going to get into an article talking about the history or the lineage about purses in more depth. All right. Okay, so here we go with this article. So it's by loveyourleather.ca. So it's entitled A Brief History of Purses. So the original meaning of the word purse was a small bag for holding your money. In Britain, this definition of purse still stands, and the term for a large bag that holds more items is referred to as a handbag. And so I'm going to get into the difference of that on Wednesday. So in American English, the term purse and handbag are considered to be the same thing. So a modern day purse is a fashionable bag with straps that easily go over the shoulder. And so that's quite interesting with the aspect of purse and handbag. Let's say your purse with a clutch typically here, in America, and then, but that throughout time, putting a tote or a shoulder bag or handbag, is essentially, that's my purse, and so those things get mixed in, and the terms where they're really interchangeable, there's no difference. And so that's why, I think it's relevant for me to go in more depth about the differences between purses and handbags. And so that's why I'm going to wrap that up and talk about that on Wednesday with handbags. So a modern-day purse is a fashionable bag with straps that easily go over the shoulder, used for carrying personal items such as money, makeup, electronic devices, and more. Purses are mainly designed for and worn by women. However, over the past 30 years or so, the man purse has been making a comeback. Since purses weren't always convenient, fashionable bags worn by women. In fact, the first purse in history were more utilitarian and actually worn by men. The use of a purse continued this way for a long time before women started using them. So the concept of a purse has been around for thousands of years, and they have evolved over time in the conjunction with fashion and the necessity to carry more personal items. So they're going to go into depth about the aspects of purses. So purses in ancient times. So the history of purses dates back more than 5,000 years. A man known as Otis the Iceman, who is Europe's oldest natural mummy, was found in the Alps in 1991 with a handbag next to him. So the bag was made out of camel's hide and had a strap attached to it. Okay, so here we are. It says more evidence of ancient purses can be found in Egyptian hieroglyphics that depicts men carrying pouches around their waist. And once again, in biblical times where Judas was identified as someone that carried purses. So in the Middle Ages. During the early Middle Ages, purses were very common for both men and women. They were made with round pieces of leather and a drawstring at the top to seal the purse tight. Instead of carrying the purse over the shoulder, people used to tie the drawstring around their girdle, which was a belt-like feature that they wore on their clothing. These purses were very small and probably only useful for carrying small items like coins. Nearly the end of the Middle Ages, a new style of purse became popular among the elite class. These new purses were made with a triangular metal frame and leather fitted over the middle frame. They had small openings at the top with a wide bottom and were secured by using a drawstring and later versions of a metal clasp. Similar to the earlier purses of the Middle Ages, these purses would hang from the owner's girdle, either with the drawstrings or by metal loops at the top of the purses. So purses during the Renaissance. So during the 16th and 17th century, as I was mentioning in AI-generated responses, this is more detail. So fashion changed significantly, with women wearing very wide dresses that had a lot of fabric. As a result, women could not wear their purses on the outside of their clothing anymore because it would get tangled in their dresses. So instead, they wore purses hanging on the inside of their dresses. Men's fashion also changed, and so did the pouches that they carried. So with the invention of pockets around 1670, men no longer had to carry a purse strapped to a girdle. They did still carry small pouches to hold their money, which later evolved to become wallets. And I'm going to talk about that too, and the aspect of how that's prevalent to fashion and what that says about men's fashion. As I get through the month of January, I'm centering myself around talking about fashion through the month of January. Well, when I get into the month of January there. So, I'm launching this here towards the end of December to get into that next week. Okay, so purses during the Industrial Revolution. So in the 18th century, fashion once again began to change with the discovery of the ancient city of Pompeii. So with this, the discovery led to a fascination with sleek and slender designs. As a result, women were wearing more slim dresses, so they were no longer able to hang a pouch under their dress, and the purse had to be reinvented. Women began wearing recouls during this time, which were more slender purses with a wrist strap. With the large increase of rail travel in the 19th century, there was a demand for new purse styles that were more durable and could hold more items. This resulted in luxury makers beginning to create purses for women to make while traveling on trains. So the first modern-day purse was envisioned in 1841 by a great entrepreneur of the time named Samuel Parkinson. Parkinson requested a seat of a traveling case and trunks for his travelers, and also a case for his wife. He noticed that his wife's purse was far too small for her belongings, and that the material it was made out of was not of durable quality. As a result, he ordered for several bags of different sizes to be made for his wife so that she can have different options depending on the scenario. He also requested that the bags be made out of the same fine leather that his own traveling cases were made out of in order to make them more durable. Parkinson contracted H.J. Cave to design and manufacture these luxury handbags for his wife. As a result, the first luxury purse was produced, and many people did not think that a woman should be carrying such a large bag. So by 1865, H.J. Cave halted their production of modern-day purses for a regular public, and only produced for the regular public. That is, so they didn't produce it for the regular public, and only produced them for royalty, celebrities, and anyone else that could afford it. So this links to the aspect of luxury designs and the thought process and the evolvement of modern day purses. So by the 1930s, handbags evolved significantly, and many of the designs we see today were invented during the time, such as the handbag, satchel, and clutch. So companies like Chanel, Louis Vuitton were beginning to make a big name for themselves in marketing high-end purses, which they continue to do today. So during World War II, purses once again changed significantly. So instead of being made with metal frames, they were made out of plastic or wood because metal was high demand and needed for the war. So these only lasted a few years, after which purses were designed and went back to their pre-war style. So by the 70s, men once again began carrying handbags, which people refer to as men purses. So they have a more masculine look than the typical purse and allow men to carry more items with them. These especially became more popular in the 20th century as people started carrying around electronic devices with them and needed extra carrying capacities, for the aspect of what we're talking about now with computer bags and things like that, laptop bags. you getting into the 20th century, more through the latter part of the 20th century, past the 80s. And so, when you get into, particularly, it's more relevant for men to travel and businessmen to take their laptops everywhere where they go and so forth. And that's quite interesting how that's interlude in the aspect of our concept about functionality and fashion. All right, so this reaches the end of the Hovering Light. I'd like to know what you all think about the aspect of fashion and with purses and how that links to our society. Feel free to email me, follow me on X, Substack, and of course, fill up those comments on YouTube. We greatly appreciate it. Tune in, turn up, and absolutely take care. Bye-bye.
Ryan Seacrest here. When you have a busy schedule, it's important to maximize your downtime. One of the best ways to do that is by going to ChumbaCasino.com. Chumba Casino has all your favorite social casino games like spin slots, bingo, and solitaire that you can play for free for a chance to redeem some serious prizes. So hop on to ChumbaCasino.com now and live the Chumba life. Sponsored by Chumba Casino. No purchase necessary. VGW Group. Void where prohibited by law. 18 plus terms and conditions apply.